as I say, this is Ryan will be joining this, and then let's listen through here. It's Hamza and Jordan initially, and I think Abbas comes in later.
Okay, Ray is obsessed with Muslims and who's Ray? Right, Ray. Convince me Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wasn't who he claimed to be. This is the only way you can take Islam from me. That's it. So your hypothetical question is irrelevant because you'd have to do that. If you can do that, Bismillah, go for it.
What was his question?
He basically said that if a Muslim is convinced that his beliefs, reasons for believing Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a messenger of God, effectively are wrong, should he still continue to believe or should he leave? The irony of ironies is this: even if you did that, even if you convinced me that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wasn't who he claimed to be, I'm sorry, but the five poisons are still in society, the guidance still remains, so it's kind of irrelevant as whether you would continue to be a Muslim.
Did you hear that? It's kind of irrelevant if you continue to be a Muslim. Hang on a moment. What does it take to be a Muslim? And he actually asks him later on, by the way. He says, what are the two things that's required for you to be a Muslim? And the way he phrased the question, Ryan wasn't too sure what to ask, and then he clarified it. And it's obviously believing, that there is only one God, aka Allah, and that Muhammad's his final messenger. So how on earth can you still be a Muslim if it were the case that Muhammad was disproven? Explain that to me. But he will contradict himself later. So you've got to listen very carefully there. But he said he'd still be a Muslim. What sort of Muslim is going to be if Muhammad doesn't exist?
Because everything you do as a Muslim, especially because I've been doing it for 18 years now, alhamdulillah, is beneficial.
Should we get him on? Should we get him on?
Yeah.
I'll send the link out, Ray, if you want to come on and take Islam away.
It's your job to prove he is. No, I don't. I don't prove nothing, mate. Go on. Listen, interesting.
No, hang on. No, it's not. We need to clarify this. No, you are making the claims. You are the one who has to show the evidence. You have to bring up why, what, where, how. It is not for me to disprove you. That's not the way that it works.
But also, do you notice that the question that Ryan asked, Hamza didn't answer? Should Muslims leave Islam if they have no good reason for believing? He didn't actually answer that question, so we'll just store that for later.
This is Ray.
Hey, how you doing, Ray?
How you doing,
I'm
Ray?
okay, you guys.
Fantastic.
Hello, Ray.
Go on, Ray. Ray, before we start, what are you? You're Christian, atheist?
Atheist.
You're an atheist. Are you an ex-Muslim or are you what?
Ex-Muslim.
Ex-Muslim. Which country? Which country?
South Africa.
South Africa. Okay. So what's your point?
So, like the question is if you don't have good reasons to believe, okay, and then are you justified in then rejecting that belief?
Yes.
Okay, so and that applies to even if you're a Muslim. So if you're shown that you don't have good reasons to believe, so then, okay, so that basically answers my question. So you would give that advice to other Muslims as well. If they don't have good reasons to believe, they should then reject Islam.
Okay.
Okay, notice the question he asked. Let's see if Hamza actually answers it directly, shall we?
If they haven't got good reasons to believe, right? You left Islam, yeah?
Yeah.
Why?
Notice what happened? He didn't answer it. He now shifted the burden over to you left Islam, why? And they're now going to interrogate Ray as to why he left Islam. And the intention here is to show that Ray didn't think about this. In other words, it wasn't a thoughtful deconversion, because in Muslim eyes, there's no ways that you can deconvert and be a critical thinker and have gone through this entirely, because then there's something that they've missed. So this is not something that they can entertain. So now that's why the question was tagged on at the end rather than actually answering directly.
So I don't have good reasons.
So why did you believe Islam is true?
I was brought up.
You were brought up as a Muslim?
Yeah.
Okay. And so why did you leave Islam?
Because
He just said I didn't have good reasons. By the way, this will be something you'll notice throughout here. Ray will give a reason, he'll give a response, and Hamza will ask it again, either like he didn't hear it, he didn't comprehend it, or he just wasn't paying attention at all. So this will be a theme. Watch it. I'll point it out as we go through.
I didn't have any good reasons. I was just basically following what I was brought up.
Okay, so what were the reasons?
Which reasons that I believed?
Yeah.
I didn't have any. I was just basically following because I was brought up. My parents was Muslim, and then I just followed it blindly. And then when I thought about it, and then I realized I didn't really have good reasons.
Okay. So for that point, I would blame your parents.
Okay.
Okay, so he'd blame his parents for not educating him. Okay, by that light, then would you blame atheists or Christians parents if their children grew up and joined Islam without thinking about it, or because they weren't taught that maybe Christianity is likely true or atheism is true? Would you blame their parents, or would you more likely just bring them into the fold and not do that? You'll only blame parents when it's a Muslim parents who quote haven't given their son, in this case, a proper Muslim education. I doubt you would reject anybody else.
I actually commented underneath the video. I wonder if my comments are still there. Probably not. Where I said, but how can you blame the parents for the incompetence of the God? Because the God created this human being, knowing that he's not going to have good enough reasons. Why doesn't he then create the parents so that they will give him the upbringing that he should be having, instead of going and saying, well, the parents are not going to give him the right thing, so he's going to fall away, and then I have to go and put him into hell. So he's blaming the parents for something that his God messed up.
Okay.
Because you should be grounded into why you believe what you believe. I always say this to Muslims, and you need to know why you believe what you believe is true. Because if you don't believe it, you could easily leave it. Do you know what I mean? What did you question? What did you question? What was it that made you start thinking Islam wasn't true?
It's just the mere fact that there is so many other religions out there, and the mere fact that I was born into it was just by chance. I didn't choose my parents. I didn't choose the era that I was born in, and I didn't choose the time that I was born in.
Okay, so let's just make sure we get this, because there's a reason why. So his views is, because there's many religions, I was born into it, and it was just the time frame. I had no control over this. Those are some of the reasons that he's giving Hamza. So I just want to repeat it so that people hear it, because it's going to be asked again later.
And these are good reasons too, mind you. Like, these are excellent reasons. You didn't choose where or who you would be born to. That is, you don't have that choice.
Yeah, and this is the nice thing, because we have two ex-Muslims here who can, who can sort of give us their impression. How does this resonate? How does that work inside you when you hear things like that? So you have a more direct approach to this to Rob and me.
The three main factors that made me a Muslim.
Okay. Did you test Islam whether it was true?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No.
How do you know Islam's not true?
Because I didn't say it's not, but I said I don't have any good reasons. And so the time to believe something is not before it's shown to be true, it's after. And it's not my job to actually prove it true. It's whoever's making the claim, it's their job to show that it's true.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
You wish.
No, it's not. It's your job. It's your job. It's your job to test the belief. If you don't believe Islam is true, you must have reasons why you don't believe it's true.
He just told you the reasons. No. Remember, what were the three reasons? There's many other religions. He was born into it. It was a time in history for him that he doesn't feel that those are compelling reasons. In other words, it was like an accident of birth that he happened to be Muslim, not because there was some other good, compelling reason. So his overall view is no good reasons, and he's given three reasons.
Yeah, and he just shut him down, basically. And he's just now in attack mode all of a sudden.
Yeah, well, but that's Hamza's style, right? His style is, I won't answer the tough questions, and I'll tag a question on the end, which is what he did at the very beginning. Because remember that very first question, should you be telling other Muslims the same thing? He didn't answer that question. Instead, he starts to ask him, why did you leave Islam, right? So you've got to pay close attention here. And it takes time to pick these things out, but these are the tactics that are used.
No, you see, the thing is, I'm not making the initial claim. Muslims is making the claim that it is true, and I just don't accept the evidence or the reasons.
No, Ray, you're mistaken. Okay, I'll make it easy for you. I'm a Muslim. I believe Islam is true. What I've just said has got nothing to do with you.
That's complete nonsense.
Excuse me, what just happened? He just said, I don't do it, and then he says he does? What?
He says, I'm a Muslim, I've got these reasons, it's got nothing to do with you. Of course it's got something to do with you, because if Hamza's reasons are compelling and he cares whether people, his view is that people should believe what is true, he thinks he's got the truth, then there is an inherent assumption there that other people should believe it too, if they hold the same values. And that's the same for everybody.
Didn't Ryan just say, listen, but you believe that it's true? And he says, no, I don't. And then, but I do. Isn't that what just happened?
Who? No, Hamza says
Ryan
he
says,
believes
don't you need to believe something that it is true? And then Hamza says, no, it's not. I believe it is true. He's immediately contradicting himself.
Hang on a moment. Let's listen again. I think let's just.
If you don't believe Islam is true, you must have reasons why you don't believe it's true.
No, you see, please, I'm not making the initial claim. Muslims is making the claim that it is true. And I just don't accept the evidence or the reasons.
No, Ray, you're mistaken. Okay, I'll make it easy for you. I'm a Muslim. I believe Islam is true. What I just said has got nothing to do with you. Okay?
He says Muslims say that it's true. This is exactly what he says, right? He says Muslims tell me that they think it's true. And then Hamza says, no. I'm a Muslim and I tell you it's true.
That's his standard response, right? He's what's called a mismatcher. So he will say no to everything, even when he doesn't actually mean no. Most often he does, and he'll just say no anyway. I mean, that's just his standard response. He isn't. It's just no to anything, right? Even if it's actually not a no. So you're never actually sure when he's disagreeing or with you, but because it's just a standard, thing that comes up in his speech.
Claim here. I'm just telling you my position. I believe Islam is true.
Okay.
Now, what the reasons why I believe Islam is true is irrelevant to you. Now, you were born a Muslim, you left Islam, which means you came to the conclusion Islam isn't true. Yeah? Now, look at the difference. I was born in a non-Muslim family.
No, okay, this is another thing. Hamza is not really clued up, is he? This is the old thing with the chewing gum or the Tic Tacs or whatever. If you are saying the number is even, then I say, no, it's not. Does not mean that I'm saying it's odd. I am just saying, no, I don't believe that it's even. I'm not making the opposite claim. And this is what he doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was brought up as an atheist, and now I'm a Muslim, right? Now you were brought up in a Muslim family, and now you're an atheist.
Yeah.
Now, you're an atheist for what reason?
He's just told you. I mean,
see,
I told you.
times.
Hamza's not paying attention. Probably this is one of the worst times. He's just not with it at all here. And I think, and I'm suspecting this is because at this moment in time, his brain is thinking of the next thing to say. How do I respond to this? So he's not actually listening to what's being said or remembering it. Again, Ryan said that he didn't have good reasons. He stated 3 reasons, and that's why he's where he's at.
Rob,
And he's asking him
off
why
his script, because Ryan is asking an excellent question, coming at it from an excellent point of view, taking everything from a totally different point, and that is fantastic. And this is why Hamza can't handle that. He's out of his depth because he doesn't understand how he can get back onto his script, because this is not the way it is usually phrased. It's brilliant.
So one tip for Ryan, why I keep saying Ryan? Because it's Ray. He got Ray there, but Ryan in the chat. So Ryan, tell us what you prefer, Ray or Ryan. We'll say Ray. I might swap to Ryan. One tip that you could do, Ray, if you hear people keep asking you the same question, stop them at that moment in time and say, can you remember what I said to you? Can you steel man, as it's called? Can you represent what I've said, my argument, my position, so that I know that you understand what I've said? Because it's clear now this is the 3rd time that he's asked that question. So once you hear it multiple times and you know you've responded to it, they can disagree with your response. But if you hear them asking the same question, then definitely get them to steel man, to represent back to you what they think you've said. That will tell you whether they've been listening. And most people who aren't listening won't be able to do that. And then they'll mumble, or they'll give some sort of tactical response. Well, you just say it again, or something like that, right? Anything other than responding back to you with a reasonably accurate representation will tell you that they're not listening.
I became a Muslim because I tested religions. I tested philosophies, and I concluded Islam is the only one that's true. Okay.
Oh, bullshit. That's total nonsense.
No.
How many religions did he test? I mean, it's a vague vacuous statement. I tested religions because, first of all, even within religions, you have, say, sub-religions, and I say that, and it's probably not an appropriate way of putting it. But for instance, you can say, "Oh, I've tested Christianity," but okay, how many forms of Christianity did you test? I tested Hinduism, or I tested Judaism, or I tested this religion. Well, how many variations of that religion did you test? Because all of them are not singing from the same hymn sheet. So when he says, I tested religion, he hasn't done that at all.
And
Yeah,
also,
go on, Mustafa.
did he go through the effort of learning Sanskrit to understand Hinduism? Did he go through the effort of learning Greek and Hebrew to understand Judeo-Christian religion? Did he actually learn other languages or other, other variations of the text? No, he didn't. He didn't make that effort. I don't see that.
Yeah, that was my note, right? How critical and thorough were you in your quote testing, right? Maybe you looked cursory at Christianity and a few other ones, and maybe you weren't convinced by atheism or whatever, but you haven't thoroughly tested all of the different worldviews out there and so forth, all the different religions. So, I mean, you can say, hey, I've looked at one or two of the major ones and I've concluded X. That's okay. But to say that you tested them all, or to give the inference that you test them all, I think is not entirely accurate.
Have you tested Islam?
No.
But didn't he? This is the second time he's asking, right? He did ask him earlier, have you tested? And he said no, right? And he's asking him again.
No, he's totally out of
So
it.
could
He's
Islam
totally
be true?
confused.
Well, you just find that there's a pattern in this particular video where he keeps asking him the question like he hasn't heard it or can't comprehend it. It's just not paying attention. Like I say, I think his brain is like cycling ahead to try and come up with an answer, or to come up with something to say, and so he's not paying attention or remembering what Ray is saying.
It could be.
Alhamdulillah. Right. How would you know if it's true or not?
Probably this. If I could never determine if it's true.
Okay, so I made a quick note here for you, Ray. So one way you can test a claim is against what we understand about reality using our cognitive capacity. I mean, there may be other ways, but that's a straightforward way of doing it. And obviously, you were on the spot here. You probably hadn't done this before, and he's asking you some difficult questions. But one way you can do it is obviously just trying to understand reality with your cognitive ability. That's how you're going to start doing a test. You can incorporate other methodologies in there, but you've got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
But that could be reasonably justified. If there's good reason, then I could say it's more probably that it's true, more likely.
No. How could you test Islam to see whether it's true or not? Because it could be true. You've already accepted it could be true. Yeah. So how would you test that?
Okay. I understand now. I don't know how you'd be able to test it.
Yeah, it's like I say. Okay, you test it against reality. What are the claims? Do they stack up with reality? What's the reliability? What's your sense of how reliable the claims are against what we understand about reality? That's one way you can test it, right? So if you use, for example, the Quran, is the Quran something? What would we expect from a God who wanted to speak clearly and concisely and completely? In a way that would be understandable to all humans across the planet. Is the Quran a wonderful representation of the way God could do this, being that he's all-powerful, or could there be an even better way? Things like that, right? So to ask yourself questions about the claims that Islam makes and say, okay, what would I expect? What do we see in the world? What are the claims that are made? Those sort of questions is things you can do, Ray.
You don't know.
No.
So you could be missing out then. If Islam could be true, you've not bothered testing it, you left it, for what? What have you left it for?
Okay, but now, so how could I test it? Because I don't have good reasons to believe it, and I don't have a method in testing it. So if you can give me a method in testing it, I could do that.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, what do you need to believe for Islam to be true?
A good reason.
No. To be a Muslim, what are the two things you need to believe?
Okay, listen. Remember what he said at the beginning. If Muhammad was shown to be not true, he would still be a Muslim. And what does he ask now? What are the two things you need to believe? Let's listen in, because obviously Ray will get there. But let's see what Hamza's response is to this.
The two things that I would need
to believe to be a Muslim.
For me, I would just need a good reason and evidence.
No. You're missing the point. I'm asking you to be specific, and this is not an opinion, it's not a subjective answer, it's an objective answer. To be a Muslim, what are the 2 things you need to believe to be true?
Oh, okay. You need to believe in the existence of Allah and that the Prophet is a messenger.
Right. Not just the existence of Allah, that Allah is the only one worthy of worship, and that Muhammad Sallallahu is his messenger, yes?
Yes.
Okay, but didn't you say earlier that if he was shown not to be, you'd still be a Muslim? So make up your mind. It sounds like you're contradicting yourself, at least in my ear.
These are the 2 things you need to believe. Right.
Yeah.
Do you believe a creator exists?
I don't think it does.
You don't think it does?
No.
Why not?
There's
I don't have any good reason.
Fucking hell, is this guy sick or what?
But remember the other thing that was asked. What did Ray ask him? Does everybody remember? He said to you, can you give me a method by which I can do this? Because he didn't currently have a method. So he asked Hamza for a method. I gave you a method, right? Straight off the bat, I can tell you what, at least some things that you can use to ascertain whether it's true or not. And we're still waiting for Hamza to give him a method that he might agree with Hamza with, that they can both then employ to see whether it comes out to be the case.
To believe that it does.
What, sorry?
I don't have any good reason to believe.
What good reason do you need? What's your criteria?
Just a good reason. You see, that's the thing.
Excellent.
If you're proposing,
That's the perfect answer.
if you're saying that there is a creator, then you need to give the method that I can use to actually test this.
Alhamdulillah. I'll tell you why I believe there's a creator.
Okay, he didn't ask you though why you believe. He said, give me a method that I can use. Can you see here that Hamza's not paying attention? So I would give you a method. I wouldn't say to you, hey, let me Ray tell you why I'm an atheist. That's not what he asked. I would say to him, hey, Ray, here you can use your cognitive abilities. You can look at reality. You can match the claims versus reality, see how much they are. Ask yourself things about a God, if it's all powerful, blah, blah, blah. And you could then establish whether this is the case. Does it meet your, what's the term that Sean Carroll uses? We all have I can't think of the word, it'll come to me in a minute, but we all have a certain threshold that we need to potentially change our views. And so, you're going to use some of this methodology to see whether that would happen. But now Hamza is answering a question that was not asked.
How's that?
Okay.
I believe there's a creator without ever needing to read any religious books. Okay?
But he says he has no good reason. Well, how can you say, well, I believe it? That is not giving anyone a good reason, and that is not giving anybody a way to test it. All you are doing is you're making your own claim. That doesn't help anyone.
Yeah, well, I think he thinks that this is a strong reason that would help somebody else. But again, a reason is not a methodology. So Ray is asking for the method that he could use, not the reason necessarily. And those are 2 separate things.
When I became a Muslim, I believed in a creator. And now the reason I believed in a creator, because I believe this universe requires a creator. Do you accept that?
I don't know.
All right, you don't know.
No, I don't think it's been remotely established that the universe requires a creator. And most cosmologists that do lean towards the universe having a beginning of some sort don't think it needs a creator. And obviously there will be some religious cosmologist who will lean in that direction. There's an Australian one, in fact, that does. I cannot think of his name off the top of my head. Very smart guy. So there will be the odd cosmologist that will think that the universe is more likely that comes from a creator. But the overwhelming majority, well over 90% of cosmologists, and the number of them that believe in some sort of universal beginning, like Alexander Vilenkin, don't think that the universe requires a creator. So most people do not think that.
All right, I believe it does. I don't believe things come into being from nothing. I believe everything that begins to exist requires a cause.
Okay, I want to highlight this for you right now because it's coming up. What did Hamza just say? Because I've got it here in quotes. I don't believe things come into being from nothing. Right? He says, and presumably he thinks that's a good reason. Right? So he says, I don't believe that things come into being from nothing. I want you guys to remember that phrase because it's going to come back to haunt him just a little bit later on.
Does that not make logical sense? Do you know anything that begins to exist without a cause?
Yeah, one of the things that sort of Skydive Phil put out, and I actually quickly looked online, is this idea of radioactive decay. And there's 2 particles, and one of them will decay and the other won't. And it appears to be entirely random as to which one will decay. In other words, we cannot see if randomness is true, then cause and effect is certainly problematic. And that was one of the examples that Skydive Phil brought up, and I remembered this at the time. So it could well be, and maybe quantum indeterminacy might also be the case. But this radioactive decay, it's not that one of them won't decay, but which one will decay. In other words, if cause and effect, if we could rewind the clock, we would know exactly which particle will decay. And in this particular case, there seems to be no way to determine which of those two particles would decay. So if cause and effect is true, we would be able to determine that. It appears that we cannot determine that. Therefore, it is possible that in this particular case, cause and effect is not operating as we understand it. So that's one example.
And we have virtual particles.
Yeah, I mean, that's potentially another one, yeah.
No, I don't.
No. So therefore, do you accept that everything that begins to exist requires a cause?
No, because then nothing begins to exist. Come on, we've done this for years now. Anybody who's ever used this should have seen by now, because for the last 20 years, this has been debunked, refuted, ridiculed, and everything, that this is a stupid argument.
Well, we've got to ask the question: what does it mean to begin to exist? And we could do a whole show on that. We won't do it now. But begins to the word begins to exist is very important. It's something that needs to be talked about more nuancedly than just steamrolling over it, because even Craig, even the cosmologists, even some of the more sophisticated theists do talk about it. It's not a case of you can just roll over that and think you know what you're talking about there. There's two different senses in which that word can be used, which we won't go into now. And so we've got to be a bit more careful of that. So Ray, a question, if you ever hear this again, you can say, what does it mean to begin to exist? And you could then get somebody to explain to you what that means. Because whichever way they go, they're going to come to a position where it's not going to run as smoothly as they think. So do ask them, what do you mean by begins to exist?
Thing that I know of, except the universe, I don't know about the universe whether it needed a cause or not.
That's a good answer. Because neither do cosmologists. Some think it do, some think it don't. There's no consensus. So that is a good answer to that question.
It begins to exist requires a cause.
Okay, everything that begins to exist, yes. Let's put it that way.
Or put it more accurately, as far as we can tell, everything within this universe that exists, that begins to exist, depending on what you mean by begins to exist, requires a cause. So it depends on what you mean by begins to exist. That's very important.
And to exist.
I don't know. As far as I know, there's no evidence either way.
Right, so you go...
Okay, slight correction there. It's not that there's no evidence. There is evidence that, well, let's put it this way, that there are views that point towards what people think is evidence. So it's not correct to say that there's no evidence either way, but there's no conclusive answer at this stage. Because there is evidence that some cosmologists think there is some sort of beginning, some cosmologists think that the universe is past eternal. And they are pointing not just to theoretical physics, but some views point towards what they think is evidence. So slight correction. It's not a major thing, but not that there's no evidence, just there's no conclusive agreement among the cosmological community about universal origins. I think that's the best way to phrase it.
Against us the idea that the universe is 13.5 billion years old, yeah?
That's what the evidence shows us.
No. I'm not interested in the evidence. I'm interested in you and what you believe. Do you believe the universe is 13.5 billion years old or not?
Don't know. So my understanding of the 13...
It's a simple question. If you can't answer simple questions, we'll say goodbye.
Okay. Okay, just repeat the question.
Okay. Do you believe the universe began to exist 30.5 billion years old, or do you believe the universe has always existed?
I think it always existed.
Why?
Because I don't think there could be a point where there wasn't ever anything.
Why do you believe that?
Because something can't come from nothing.
That's not a good reason.
Let me just go back and remind you.
Yes, exactly.
Let me just go back and remind you here. I'm going to quote it. Hamza, I don't believe things come into being from nothing. That was his quote. Remember I said to you, hang it in the air?
Yeah.
Now Ray has said exactly the same thing, and he says this is not a good reason.
Oh, God,
I told you to come back and haunt you.
I think it is because something can't come from nothing, meaning that there's always got to be something.
Or it came from nothing.
Okay, but you don't believe that it came from nothing. He's just said he doesn't believe it's coming from nothing. So why are you trying to press a point that neither of you believe when he said that he doesn't believe that? And who actually says something comes from nothing anyway? Apart from somebody like Lawrence Krauss, and he's given his reasons. Now, if you accept that that's what nothing means, then he's got an argument for why that's the case. Now, if you don't accept that, again, the other thing, Ray, to bear in mind here, it's similar. You've got to ask. One of the things you want to make a note of is ask a Muslim when they say to you, ask them, what do you mean by nothing? Do you mean nothing in a scientific sense, or do you mean the philosophical sense of absolute nothing? And if they mean absolute nothing, then you could ask the question, I think it's a valid one, and I've asked them, where in reality is there such a thing as absolute nothing? At any point ever in the history of reality, whether you have a God or no God, why is there any reason to believe that something that you want to call absolute nothing in fact exists? It's a concept, a bit like a pink unicorn. We can talk about a pink unicorn, but does it exist? Have we got any good reason that it exists anywhere in the universe? We haven't been everywhere in the universe, but we can infer that it requires, X, Y, and Z to be the case, and it's unlikely. But it's even more unlikely that absolute nothing exists, because everything that we've tested within the universe, at least, even where you would have called something absolute nothing, in fact is not nothing. There's a quantum vacuum, which is what Krauss calls nothing, the absence of space, time, energy, and matter. If that's not nothing, then what the hell is nothing? And if that is nothing, then they have had experiments, it's called the Kashmir effect, where virtual particles pop in and out of existence, and they push these plates together. So if you're going to accept that that's the definition of nothing, then in fact things can, quote, pop into existence out of, quote, nothing. If you're not going to accept that and you're going to talk about absolute nothing, now the burden's on you to share with us why we should even take that concept as anything more than a concept. I've got no reason to believe that it exists anywhere in reality, especially if you're a religious person.
Mm. And I think it's the Kazimi effect. But my favorite nothing is actually the Tracy Harris nothing. If you ever want to go and look that up, I think that's the best. She drives people absolutely nuts with her way of asking them about this.
And I think it's logical that something can't come from nothing.
And so you think it's logical for the universe to always exist?
Yes, it's more plausible than something coming from nothing.
So all the scientists are wrong about a 13.5 billion year old universe?
As far as I know, there's no
claim. That's not what is being said. Where did
Yeah,
you get that from?
And the thing is, by this stage, because I think this is relatively recent, right? He's had conversation with Skydive Phil about this as well. And it depends what you mean by universe. If you're talking about a local universe, i.e. from the moment of the rapid inflation, which we typically call the Big Bang, then from that, quote, moment to about this moment is about 13.78 billion years. But that says nothing about whether the universe had a beginning or whether the universe is eternal in the past. All it tells us is from the moment of inflation to now. And if there's something, quote, before that, then either there's some sort of beginning or there's a past eternal universe. So at no point are you contradicting, quote unquote, what we understand about the life of our local universe.
Consensus of whether it began. I think that's the beginning of the Big Bang, but I'm not. Sorry?
I believe in the Big Bang.
I think it's the base model that we've currently got.
Do you believe in the Big Bang? What's the Big Bang? Describe it to me.
Oh my
Why is this relevant? Can you see the rabbit hole that's been going down? And Ray, this is something to learn, right? Once you start going down to a rabbit hole, it's like try and have in your mind what was the original question, because there's a rabbit. Muslim apologists are very good at going down rabbit holes when they avoid the original question.
What happened at the Big Bang?
It started from a dense point.
What started?
The singularity started from an infinitely dense and infinitely hot point.
What started at the Big Bang?
The universe.
Well, it depends what you mean by the universe. Okay, again, this becomes quite a nuanced discussion, and you've really got to know what you're talking about. I'm not by any means an expert, but if you listen to Skydive Phil or Sean Carroll or whatever, there's a lot more to this universe, etc. I mean, lay people just want to steamroll over this because they don't understand it, but there's a lot more nuance here. And so what you really mean is that matter and energy, what we understand by matter and energy at that moment in time rapidly inflated. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. Is that the universe? Well, you could take a position that that's our local universe potentially, but then what does it mean to be a universe, right? And then off you go down that rabbit hole. So it's a nuanced discussion that probably isn't best done with Muslim apologists that really don't know much about this.
Oh, so it began?
from the
No. You need to differentiate between beginning and transforming. If you are taking wood and you're making it into a bench or a whistle or whatever, as from what point does this begin? This is the whole point of beginning. You need to define what it is that you're talking about, what the criteria is for beginning. So you
Yeah.
can't just say that it's beginning. You need to then go and specify what it is exactly that you are talking about. Is it from after the plank length, after the plank time, after this, or are you specifying something after or before or whatever? So you need to be, but he doesn't understand this. You see, he's just throwing out sound bites that he's picked up somewhere, but he doesn't understand them.
Yeah.
from the singularity it started.
What began at the
Which,
Big
by
Bang?
the way, also doesn't. This is also outdated, right? The singularity thing. So this went out like 30 years ago. So I also recommend not using that.
Time
Yeah,
and space.
yeah, that's right. That was Sir Roger Penrose and Stephen Hawking in 1997. I can't remember the name of the book, but they've subsequently changed their position. They don't use the term singularity, and there's certain things, I don't remember the specifics of it, I could ask Skydiving Phil, that happened since that book came out that persuaded them not to use that term.
Is that a moment in time?
Sorry, say again?
Was that a moment in time? The book.
Oh yes, yeah. That I think that's the one. Yeah, that sounds like it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they've updated their positions about that, and they don't use that term anymore.
Because of infinity, it's a mathematical problem. Because as soon as you go and you actually you apply it, you get into a mathematical infinity, which doesn't help you. This is why they said, no, let's do away with it, because let's replace it with inflation, which makes a lot more sense. And then they tested it, and lo and behold, that's what it was.
Yes.
Right. Has time and space always existed?
Space always existed. No.
Right. So it began.
I'm not too sure
You're wasting my
where
time.
it began.
You're wasting my time. You're just trolling. Goodbye.
You know what I find interesting is the
Honestly.
Okay, let's say I accept you that it began.
I don't want you,
What-
no, I don't want you to accept nothing from me. I want to know what you see, because if you started this whole conversation,
No, he started this part of the conversation asking you for a methodology by which he could attempt to find out whether Islam is true. And you've gone down a rabbit hole. Then you get frustrated when he's not an expert in the field and he's being a bit more cautious on his responses because he's not giving you, quote unquote, cookie cutter responses that you can just move on to the next point with.
I need good reason to believe this. I need good reason to believe that. You got no good reason to believe what you're saying.
The problem is I'm not a specialist in that field. I'm just the layman on your street. I don't know too much about cosmology. And so that's where I'm struggling to answer those questions.
But that's fine to say that, right? You've just got to reiterate that at the very beginning and say, here's my understanding is I'm undecided, and stick with that so that you don't have to take a position if you don't believe in that position, and just remind them that you're not an expert. And if they keep trying to press the point, then they're going to be disingenuous, because all we need to do is come in there on a topic they're not experts on, like cosmology, which they're pretty clueless on, and we can expose them as clueless. But that's not the point, right? So you just got to stick with your guns there.
But the thing is, as well, by this discussion, he's basically trying to show the audience as well that Ray doesn't know what he's talking about in certain areas. So if he doesn't know what he's talking about in certain areas and he can't admit or dismiss them, then what position is he in to do the same with Islam, Muhammad, and the Quran?
Okay, we made a big claim. You said the universe has always existed, and you're not an expert on cosmology. So why are you making that claim?
I said it. According to me, I think that it began. I'm not saying definitively that it began or that it's
No,
infinite.
you have gone against the Big Bang.
At no point has he gone against the Big Bang. And I've explained it, and that shows that he doesn't understand. Whether you believe the universe had a beginning or whether you believe the universe is eternal in some way, neither of those positions negates the Big Bang. Neither of them. So it shows that he really has no clue here.
That's according to what the cosmologists are saying.
Yeah, so you're going against the cosmologists who are experts in what they're doing, against you.
No, you're doing that. Isn't that the irony is very thick here? Where's my meat cleaver irony cutter? You are taking a position, which is the universe had a beginning, against the consensus of undecided cosmologists. He's not doing that. He's in fact saying that. He did get sort of maybe tricked or bullied into taking a position, but he's now gone back to say, hey, I'm not sure really. That's what I'm understanding. So no, he's not doing that. That's what you do. And I've challenged you on that, and obviously it just goes down a dead end.
What you're talking about, and you need good reasons to believe stuff. But in this case, you rather take your own opinion because it suits your narrative rather than what the other side is saying. Because the other side requires a cause of the universe, and you're trying to hide from that.
He's
Okay.
That's
So-
how logical you're being.
The irony, man, I've got my irony meat cleaver next to me here, and it's cutting through this like I'm a butcher at the moment.
I get your point. I see what you're saying. But I still don't see that how it gets you to a creator, even if it had a beginning.
Oh, right. Okay. So if it had a beginning, we just already established the principle that things that begin to exist require a cause. Cause and
There he
effect.
goes
Yeah?
again.
Yeah,
All right. So what's the cause of the universe?
I have no idea.
Great answer, right? And actually, the answer is, hey, I don't know if the universe had a beginning. If it's uncaused, i.e. that it's past eternal, then obviously it wouldn't have a cause. I, Ray, or me, Rob, in this case, I'm undecided. So the grammar of your question tells me that you weren't paying attention. Because if you ask me what's the cause, and I've said to you I'm undecided, then obviously that question isn't directed at me. You must be speaking to somebody else.
Alhamdulillah. Okay. Do you accept the cause of the universe has to be more powerful than anything we know?
Okay, and I put a question mark here. What does it mean to be powerful?
Yeah,
And even if we grant that, all that we're actually saying is that something more powerful than we know was involved in the beginning of the universe. You know, it could have been Thanos or
power? Sorry.
Go on.
No, I just wanted to ask, how do you know how much power it requires to create a universe?
Exactly. I mean, it's entirely speculative. And how do you differentiate more powerful than us? Sure, by what standard? By what? The ability to create, matter or to manipulate matter? Okay, cool. We can say something is powerful. How powerful? We don't know, right?
More powerful, the cause. I would say yes. It need to be more powerful. Yeah, I can grant you that.
I mean, there's nothing to even think about. We don't know anything powerful enough to cause the universe. So whatever caused the universe has to be more powerful than anything, yeah?
Did you notice what he just said there?
Yeah,
it has to be more powerful than anything. What he said before, and I made a note of this, right, is that he said it's something that's more powerful than we know. It's something more powerful than we know involved in the beginning of the universe. That was the questions. Now it's more powerful than anything. Can you see how quickly it's a shifting of the goalposts? It's very subtle. It's very quick if you don't notice it. It's suddenly now more powerful than anything.
And the thing
Well, we
that he
don't know
said
what-
before that is even worse, because he says, why are you even thinking about that? That is the worst thing that you can tell somebody after you've just asked them a question. If you ask, somebody should think about your question before they answer.
Yeah, good point. Of course you should be thinking. Because in his mind, it's a given, right? It's if, the answer is straightforwardly obvious, there's nothing to think about. You must just say what he's expecting you to say. And that's not the case.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you believe the cause of the universe has to be conscious?
Conscious. Not conscious in the sense. I don't know. It's
Excellent.
never thought that line of. I don't know.
Okay. What I'm going to do, because you seem to be struggling with my question. Sorry, someone's in my house.
Oh, you were struggling with the answer.
We've got a back joined us as well on the phone as well. I think you'd like to say things as well.
Okay, Ray, sorry.
I can't.
Right, I'm gonna make it easy for you.
Saying.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you why I'm a Muslim. Fair enough?
Who cares?
He never asked about that. I mean, maybe that will help him. Maybe you throw out a reason that might convince him, but you've still never answered the original question. I think it bears repeating. He at no point asked you, why are you Muslim?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Struggling with the questions. And I don't want to look like I'm trying to trick you into answers and things like that.
You do sort of come across as if you're trying to bully him here a little bit, I have to say.
Yeah.
To make you look, for me to become like such a statistical maniac. All right.
Just before you go in, I just want to say that it's because I haven't thought about that line of questioning too much, and so that's why I'm not too familiar with the beginning or the infinite of the universe. It's not something that I know that well.
It's good you answered that way because that's honesty and that's integrity. All right.
Okay, why did you press him all the time prior to that when that was the first thing he said? Then you kept asking questions, and then he took a position which he probably didn't believe in anyway.
The reason I asked this question, and it's good you never thought about it this way, because now you can think about it this way. Because when you come to the conclusion, I'll tell you my belief in the universe. I believe the universe had a cause. I believe that cause had to be uncaused. It had to.
Okay, so you listen carefully to the words, it had to be. It's not that it's more probable or that I think it's more likely or that I just believe it, but it had to be. Now, if you take that, that means that the opposite is not possible. And so now he has amounted to show that it is impossible for the universe to come about, even if it had a beginning, through natural processes. And I think that is near impossible for him to do. So he's made a monstrous claim, and you won't hear him remotely get close to trying to justify that.
Well, plus there's other ways. Plus there's a million other gods who all claim the same thing. How is he going to disprove all of those?
Well, he wouldn't have to stop if he could demonstrate through the impossibility of the contrary that his particular God did it. That's the easiest way to do it. But nobody's ever been able to do that. So the other,
50,000 years, yeah.
Yeah, so the other option is to argue that it's more probable. But to say that it had to be, now you've got a huge burden, right?
The first cause, as Stephen Hawking would say, because the first cause it can't have a cause because of the problem of infinite regression.
Okay, let's quickly deal with this again. This whole problem of infinite regression, I've actually got it here, and I thought, because Muslims keep repeating this as if they think this is an objection, and it's baffling to me because I don't think they really understand this, right? And when you ask them, what's the problem with infinite regression? Oh, well, if the universe was infinite in the past, we'd never get to this moment of now. What the hell are you talking about? Let me read you something from one of the foremost experts and somebody that he talked about earlier, Sir Roger Penrose, who worked with Stephen Hawking. And here's what he basically says. His model, conformal psychic cosmology, is a model of general relativity in the universe that iterates through infinite cycles with the future time-like infinity of each previous iteration being identified by the Big Bang singularity of the next. Penrose popularized his theory in the 2010 book Cycles in Time. Penrose's basic construction is to connect a countable sequence of open Friedman, Lemire, Robinson, Walker spacetimes, quite technical stuff, each representing a Big Bang followed by an infinite future expansion. Penrose noted that the past conformal boundary of one copy of this spacetime can be attached to the future conformal boundary of another after a conformal rescaling. Quite technical language. All it simply means, if we dumb it down, is that you can have, there's a lovely picture of which I won't easily be able to show you, but think of it like the Hindenburg, the balloon, the Hindenburg. On each end, universes are connected and they go infinitely in each direction. And so there's nothing that, and this idea that we wouldn't reach this moment of now, we are in one of those moments. What is it that wouldn't reach this moment of now? And if God is infinite, then how would God reach this moment of now? Somehow they've got to overcome that. Oh, well, he's timeless and outside of space, so that doesn't apply to him. So you can come up with any sort of explanation to show how God couldn't do that. But there's nothing in nature that rules out a past eternal universe. And I've just given you one example.
Can't solve. I believe the cause of the universe be conscious because it chose when to cause. It wasn't the cause wasn't a result of the existence of the cause. The effect wasn't a result of the existence of the cause. The effect came in when the cause is choosing, which means it's conscious. I believe.
And I've just given you a model that shows that doesn't have to be the case at all. But he wouldn't understand this, even though Skydive Full has explained it in layman's language, probably more accurately and nuanced and better than I ever could. So he has heard of some of this stuff. But of course, he's going to say it couldn't have come about in any other way, and which is demonstrably not the case. To say that you need evidence that it's impossible that it could come about another way, and I've just given you a possibility that has not been refuted in cosmology. And if he's going to claim he's refuted it, by all means put his paper in, and I'm sure Sir Roger Penrose will be interested to hear it. But this babbling, rambling response is obviously not even going to pickle anybody's ears that understands the topic.
That the cause of the universe is intelligent due to what is caused, due to the respiratory system.
So now what he's gone on to is the design argument. Hey, look at all these things. Look how amazingly well they're designed. This could only have come about through a teleological mind. And then, there's many things you could say about this, but then you point out that some of these things are poorly designed. And then what do you say? Now the Christians have an answer to it about, original sin, but the Muslims don't have that answer. So how does Hamza answer this? If you're going to claim that this is all magical and all we have to do is show you how not wonderful certain parts of quote unquote design are, in the Muslim view, then that would refute your answer, and that's easy to do. That's just one way you could challenge that.
To the digestive system, due to the nature and the plants and all of these things. This is my belief, yeah? So I believe in a powerful, conscious, intelligent cause of everything that exists.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Right. Is that reasonable or unreasonable?
It's reason. I can see how you can reasonably get to that position.
Okay, so I actually said, yeah, reason is a subjective criteria. We can grant, what we can grant is that it's not irrational, i.e. that it doesn't violate any law of logic. But to say something is reasonable, that people are going to invoke their own criteria. I'm not aware of some sort of objective methodology that says, hey, here's what you've got to follow for something to be reasonable.
Without even thinking, saying God, without saying Allah, without mentioning books and prophets and anything.
What did he mention? In everything but name? That's why I kept it out there. See, this is the tactic, right? I'm going to describe Allah or God. I'm not going to use the word, remember, powerful, conscious, intelligent cause of everything that existed, and then claim that I'm not even talking about God or Allah. Right? This is disingenuous, if not dishonest. I leave it up to the safekeeping of the audience to decide on that. If you're going to describe something that has 4 wheels, an engine and 2 doors and a roof and a steering wheel, and somebody says, "What? Oh, but do you drive a car?" I didn't say anything about a car. What are you going to think of somebody that says that sort of thing to you?
Then I concluded that 2 years before accepting Islam. Okay, so I became convinced there must be a cause of this universe. Okay. Now, if there is a cause of this universe, and this cause of the universe is indeed God or Allah, yeah, would at this point you concede that if this is true, then this is the one I should be taking guidance from?
Oh, this is beautiful. Let's just replay that again. Let me just replay that just quickly for you. This is beautiful.
This is like a child, Rob.
I'm just because this is a good point, and he brings this up a lot, right? Let's just hear this again.
Would at this point you concede that if this is true, then this is the one I should be taking guidance from?
Okay, I'm going to pause it there. What do you guys think about that? Before I
It doesn't follow. It's not non sequitur.
Correct.
He's badgering the witness, Your Honor.
Yeah, and how do you know you are actually receiving that guidance from that specific thing? We haven't even established that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, but what he's saying though, Mustafa, is that if there was this creator of the universe, then we should follow it. And like Stop says, my answer is the same, no. Because we could imagine an evil creator of this universe. Would you be following the guidance of a being that you either didn't know or that was evil? No, you wouldn't, right? So what's a hidden premise in this is that this being is omnibenevolent, and number 2, that he somehow has access to that information such that he knows it to be the case. And that's all hidden in the premise there, that, hey, if the creator demonstrated itself, well, you'd just follow it. No, you wouldn't. You'd ask this creator things you'd want to establish. What sort of creator is this? You wouldn't just blindly follow because it established the universe. No. But that shows you that his premises is that it must be all omnibenevolent, and he knows it in some way. And now you ask that question, and down the Euthyphro dilemma we go, which he probably still doesn't know anything about from last Friday. And so that would be problematic.
Yeah.
Of course you would.
Yeah.
So this is what we call La ilaha illallah. There's nothing worthy of worship except Allah. But I'm not going to say Allah.
That's not what it says. You're not translating Arabic. You don't know anything about Arabic. Sorry.
What the other question is, why is a creator of the universe worthy of worship? Especially if you haven't established that this creator is omnibenevolent and wants you to do that. And if the creator doesn't need it, why is it automatically the case that it's worthy of worship? You have a lot more work to do to get to worthy of worship. I don't think, even if you had the most amazing creator, I don't think that if the creator doesn't need it, then the question is, why would he ask for it? If he doesn't require it, why would he, quote unquote, want it? But you haven't even got to that stage yet. You're like miles away from there. All that you're at this moment, that there's a creator of the universe, and you're automatically begging the question or jumping the gun to suggest that it's worthy of worship. What? Because it created the universe and everything in it? No, that's not the case. But you can see how the mind thinks, right?
Yeah, but it could be the prowler in the van with a lollipop luring us in. We don't know this. It could be like the proverbial Satan posing as a god, saying, "I've got something good for you. I've got something good for you." And in reality, it's not. It's the other way around. Like Rob once said something, and this stuck in my mind. It could be the total other way around. That this is a God who really wants to test intelligence and is saying everybody who believes this bullshit is an idiot, and all I want is the people who don't believe it, they will go to heaven. All the other ones are too stupid to go to heaven. This is the real test. So it could be exactly the reverse.
Yeah, no, that's just my hypothesis. That's the opposite to the Muslim claim. What if this was Jibril
Disguise.
in disguise? How would you know? How would you be able to establish that it wasn't? And here's the question. Here's the killer question that you would have to overcome. And I'm tipping my hand, but it's fine. You would have to be able to respond in such a way that the following question would not apply. And that question is, that's exactly what Jibril or Satan would have you believe. If you have some response that can overcome that, now you have some way to establish that, in fact, it either is Jibril or it's not Jibril. But if until you can do that, you have no way to establish that.
That kind of reminded me of the Yazidi belief too. Like the Yazidi belief with the peacock, that it's the reason why we're here and not God itself. So there's the peacock is the angel, or it's a form of Gabriel in that religion. So it was very fascinating. So it reminded me of that.
Wow. And what did you think?
Of it's a new possibility. Definitely, it's definitely a possibility, because it's very similar to the Greek, Titan Prometheus. That is, like, he got humans free from the gods, and now giving them secret information. And
it's fascinating for a kid. Come on.
Yeah.
Ilaha illallah. There's nothing worthy of worship except Allah. But I'm not going to say Allah yet, because we haven't got there. All right. All I can ascertain.
He's just said it twice. And he says, I'm not going to say it
for real?
The juncture is that I have a cause of the universe, which has to be uncaused, which has to be powerful, which has to be conscious.
Okay, he hasn't established any of those things.
No, it's just wishful
He
thinking.
just says it has to be the case, and he hasn't established that in any meaningful way that I've heard whatsoever.
And has to be intelligent by necessity. And I don't even see, I spoke with a guy about this from Eton, and he agreed that my reasons for believing in a creator of the universe are 100% logical, okay? Which means they're what? Good reasons.
No. I've got a big no here. I've got like a huge no here in my notes. Let's replay. Let's say that again. Hey, some guy from Eton. Well, that's an appeal to authority. Some guy at Eton. Well, that definitely means that it must be the case. Let's find this guy, because he's obviously the authority on what must be, reasonable or logical. So his bar is, okay, it's told me that it's totally logical, which is the lowest bar that you can possibly get in a rational discussion. Right? That's where you start. That's a given. We all accept that somebody's going to attempt to come with a rational argument. If we establish it's irrational, they're out of the playing field. So that's almost like a given, and he's like patting himself on the back. But then his non-sector is, hey, if it's rational, therefore it's, what was the words again? Let's just play that again just for a few moments.
Creator of the universe are 100% logical, okay? Which means they're what? Good reasons.
No. If something is rational, it doesn't mean that it's good reasons. It just means that it's overcome the lowest bar, which is you've shown that it's not irrational. That does not remotely mean that it's good reasons.
Good reasons to believe. Okay? Part that there. Now, here's the thing. How would we know about this creator? How would we find out why he created us, and what's our purpose, and where we're going?
Okay, so there's many answers. One is he could directly make it known in the brain of every human at the time of birth or any time thereafter, such that it would be a priori, which means reasoning or knowledge which precedes theoretical deduction rather than observation or experience. In other words, it's in there before you have to go out into the world and observe and make inferences. So he could have directly put that into every human brain a priori.
And how could we possibly get that information? That's the question.
If probably if there's clues written in the universe or some sort of some clue. He needs to give us some sort of clues.
Right.
I think you just got to be careful with that one, Ray. If you're going to say something like clues, again, what might be better to say, well, what is the attributes? Does this God want us to know about him?
So basically, the only way we can find out is if he reveals the information.
Okay.
You couldn't find out about the cause of the universe unless the cause of the universe revealed information about.
No, of course you could. You could discover it, right, as we have. So even if God was the cause of the universe and we discovered it and he didn't reveal it, unless you're claiming that everything that happens is a revelation of God, in which case we don't have free will, so you're not going to go that route.
Itself,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Now, so what we're looking for next now is is it reasonable to assume that the cause of the universe has indeed revealed information about the cause of the universe and everything else? Is it reasonable to think that? Is it to assume that? If the cause exists, of course it's reasonable. So this is where we move on to stage 2 now. So we look in history and we see many, many men claim to be messengers sent by this cause.
Okay.
Yeah? Okay. And if you look at all of the messengers, there was only one messenger that claimed to come for all of mankind.
Really? I put here really with a big question mark.
Total garbage. Total garbage. Matthew 28, 19 and 20. Crying out loud.
What does that say? Just so we know.
Go therefore make disciples in the whole inhabited earth for a witness to all the nations, and then baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
And then there's Matthew 24:14. Then there's John 3:16. Then there's Romans 10, 13, 14, 15. There's Isaiah chapter 2 verses 2 to 4. Then there's Haggai 2:7.
Okay. We get the idea. But I think what he's going to say is no. Jesus came for the Jews, right?
No,
and obviously you can refute him on that if you like. But my big thing is really, where's your evidence for that? Have you investigated all these other so-called messengers and established that nobody makes this claim?
123,999 of them.
Yep, but Muhammad was the only one apparently through his non-existent level of investigation. Hey, you're entitled to, put out your faith-based claims if you want. Just don't expect the rest of us to take it seriously.
All the previous men who made this claim for the Jews, came for these people, came for their people. Noah came for his. They all claimed for their own people. The only one man in history to have claimed to have come for all of mankind was who? Muhammad. Peace and blessings be upon him. Okay.
Wait. Okay. It doesn't seem like it. It does not seem like he came for all. In fact, he probably came for the Arabs. That's what it looks like, because what happened after was an Arabian Empire.
Good point.
You now need good reason to believe he is who he claimed to be.
Yeah.
Agreed?
Sorry, was somebody saying something?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because he's claiming to be a messenger of God now.
Okay.
Now, what are the alternatives?
Alternatives within him saying who he is.
So he's saying he's a messenger of God. What are the alternatives?
He could be lying.
The easier one, Ray, I just wrote down here is he's not the messenger of God. What's the alternative? Because you heard the word alternatives and suddenly, you got to be careful as well. He's got the view that there's all these alternatives. And so he uses that language because he's going to give you liar, crazy, whatever. He's got his script. He knows these three things and he's going to want you to go along that line.
This is what you were just referring to.
Sorry, say again.
This is what you were just referring to.
Anything else?
It could be mistaken.
Okay, that's the most charitable. That's the easiest for us to challenge, and it's the hardest for him to defend. Do you think he's going to respond to that or acknowledge that? I'm gonna. If you want to predict, go ahead.
He could be delusional.
Delusional. What else?
Or crazy. Yeah.
Well,
which one did he not acknowledge? I don't think it's difficult, right? The hardest one for him to defend and the easiest for us to challenge.
I think
Why do you think that is, by the way? For those of us that know Hamza and other Muslim apologists, because they have a script that says there's 3 options, and they purposefully, willingly and knowingly exclude the option that he could be mistaken, because that's the hard one to defend and the easy one for us.
I think more like, I don't know what else, but I think it's more likely he could be lying.
Lying.
Okay, see, again, I made a note here. Careful, Ray, because you need to provide the evidence for your claim. When Hamza should be providing the evidence for his claim, also claim somebody is lying, you have to show the evidence of their intent, which is very hard to do. So mistaken is much easier, and Hamza sidestepped, acknowledging that you made that. You did actually say it, but I would press that one. Don't go with any of the other options. You don't need to. But now you've taken a position, and now again, watch what's going to happen now. You're going to have to defend that. Be careful of this, right? It's happened a couple of times, and this is good learning for you. Don't go with an option unless you really think you've got good reasons for it.
Rob, you need to reactivate the screen.
Sorry?
You need to reactivate the screen. I didn't know that if I leave, it won't go back. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
Answer.
I'll go with that, yeah.
Okay. So if we can give you good reason to believe he didn't lie, then what?
Yeah. If you can give me, then I'll probably believe that he wasn't lying.
That's a good answer, right?
Exactly.
That's a good answer, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the straightforwardly obvious answer. Then I'm going to believe he's not lying, yeah.
And then what?
That's it.
Yeah, then I can believe what he's saying. But if you can show me that.
Okay, I want to make a small correction here. Really, what you can do is you can accept that he believed what he was saying. That still doesn't establish that what he said is in fact true. It's a small thing, but it's something that's worth noting. If he's not a liar, all that means is that he believes that he's telling you the truth. That doesn't mean that it's actually true. Small one.
That he definitively wasn't lying, and then I'll believe what he says and say who he is.
Fantastic. So you believe he lied?
I think that's the most plausible explanation.
And what are your good reasons for that?
The claims that he makes is too extraordinary, because we know people can lie. People do lie all the time. And so when it comes to big claims that they're making, they need stronger evidence. And I don't think the evidence or the reasons that he's given justifies his claims. It's just too big. The claims are just too big
By the way,
to be true.
Just in case somebody does go here, there is no evidence, all right, that there is anything that says that Muhammad was not a liar. It's only the texts themselves that are making that claim. It's always Muhammad himself that says, I am not a liar, I am liable, I am the one that this, and then you have supplementary stories around this, that he was the one who was the arbiter for the four the different tribes and things like that. But these are all Islamic texts.
Right. So what's your good reasons again, sorry? Well, because you don't like what he's saying, what that makes him a liar?
Because I think the claims is too big that he's making, and therefore it's unreasonable to believe those claims off of the little evidence that is given.
Why is the claim too big?
The claims are to be like this. I don't know how the saying goes, but the bigger the claim, the more evidence you need. And he's coming with large claims, saying that he's the messenger, and I don't think that he's justified with the evidence.
Messenger of who?
From Allah.
No, from the Creator, yeah?
You see, he's just got the default position of saying no. He says Allah, he says no, the Creator, right? It's just recognizing the pattern, not to get put off by that.
Yeah, from the Creator.
Oh, okay. And why? What's your good reasons to believe he's not telling the truth?
Because he that he's not telling the truth. That's because of the claims that he's making. It's too big. So it's more likely that he's lying than it being actually true.
Okay. How would you know if someone's lying?
You can test the claims.
Right. And how would you? So if someone says something to you, let me give you an example.
Okay.
If someone said to you, Nelson Mandela, whilst he was alive, after receiving his Nobel Peace Prize, was caught burgling a house. What would your response be?
I would say that it's very unlikely that you do something like that.
Why?
Because he doesn't have a good reason to go burgle a house. I know he should be wealthy. He's not that kind of person with low morals to go do something like that. So if someone present that to me, they would need to give me the evidence, and I wouldn't believe something like that.
Right. So basically, what you would do if someone makes a claim about somebody, you would test his character.
Yes.
Okay. And look for the motives, like you said, he's wealthy. Why would he need to burgle? And
Yes.
that kind of guy. I get that. Okay. Why did Muhammad lie, according to you?
So first of all, I do remember a little bit of Islam, and I do remember there was people at the time in his vicinity that did say that he was lying. And I know that there was people also that said that he wasn't a liar, that he was the most truthful.
You missed the point. I'm asking you, why do you believe he would lie?
He
That's
just
right.
told
He's giving
you
you the reason.
the reason. Like I wrote here, are you not understanding or accepting his reasons?
Yes.
Claiming and you claim he's missing the point. What are you smoking? At this point, I was like, are you speaking to somebody else? He's just literally like the last sentence he said was giving you the reasons why. Now you ask him again.
Okay, if we eliminate the options, could he be telling the truth? Is he crazy or is he lying? I think it's more.
You forgot the other one that you did mention, though. Is he mistaken, right? That's the only one, Ray, that you need to defend. The other ones are going to be much harder for you.
More likely that he's lying than he's telling the truth, or that he's crazy.
Look, a crazy person tells the truth.
I just wrote here, a crazy person could be telling the truth. It depends what it is that they're crazy about. If somebody says, hey, I'm Hitler, then it's very likely they're not telling the truth. If that person who says, hey, I'm Hitler, says, hey, I believe that man landed on the moon, for example, then he's likely telling the truth. So it depends what's crazy. So sometimes they can tell the truth, sometimes they don't. It's like any other human, basically. It's just that certain things they would be demonstrably wrong on, and which is why we would label them crazy.
Do you accept that?
Yes.
Because they think they're telling the truth, and that's the whole point of being crazy, right?
Yeah.
So a crazy person tells the truth.
Only on certain occasions, not necessarily, and certainly not on what they claim to be crazy on. Otherwise, you wouldn't be giving them a label crazy.
Your claim is he lied. Therefore, he's a liar. So now, they would know.
How about that for a tautology, right? And I haven't got much to say. I'll just utter a tautology. Hey, you thought he told a lie, therefore he's a liar. Tell us something informative.
Nelson Mandela, you looked at his life, he's wealthy, he's this, he's that. So there's no motive, there's no reason for him to lie.
Yeah.
Why do you believe Muhammad lied?
Maybe he wanted.
Ooh, as soon as you go down the maybe route, I put here speculation. He's now asking you to speculate. Otherwise, he would have asked you for the reasons, and you would have to provide evidence. At the moment, he's saying why, and you said, "Oh, maybe." As soon as you go down that route, like you've opened a can of worms, and let's see how this goes. Because this is as far as I got with the notes, and now we're all running through it together.
By the way, I just want to point
more
out something.
power.
We
Could be
have extended the times of the gin and tonic show. All right, so we have changed the format a little bit to accommodate this, because this was a genuine question, a genuine request from somebody who needed some pointers, who needed some support in something. This is why we decided to change it for today.
We won't finish it tonight, and then we'll kind of leave it half done. So my suggestion is we come back for a part 2, but I'm open to the democratic view on that.
Yeah, I'm okay with coming next week.